I'm Kathleen Held, CEO of Cini-Little, and welcome back to Cini Sessions. In this session, we're talking about programming as the fundamental beginning of food service design. Before walls are drawn, before equipment is selected, before aesthetics are discussed, programming defines how the operation will actually function. It's the strategic groundwork that ensures the design supports the realities of service, menu, staffing, and demand. Today, I'm joined by Tim O'Mara, Vice President of Management Advisory Services at Cini-Little, and we're going to unpack why this step is so critical to long-term operational success. Tim, let's dive in.
Good morning.
Good morning. You describe programming as the operational framework that shapes the entire project. For our listeners, can you explain what programming really means in practical terms and how it translates into proper sizing requirements, service style, menu options, and the overall operation?
Yeah, so programming is the driver of the operation. And when we talk about programming, it also drives the design of what is actually drawn and implemented. So when we talk about programming, it's like a three-legged stool that we talk to the stakeholders, the owners, the people that are engaging us for the programming exercise. And what we ask them is, what would you like and what do you desire your food service to offer to your customers operationally, culturally, and financially? So that becomes the umbrella. That's the framework that everything else is done under. So based on what we hear from them, we take what they would like, and then we do our due diligence, and then we put it through our 2 hurdle test: desirable, feasible. So what they've told us that they want operationally, culturally, and financially, that is what is desirable for them. Then we look to find recommendations for the program and the ultimate design that are feasible to make those 3 goals accessible to them. So what we do is we ask a lot of questions. Sometimes they're questions that they hadn't really thought about. Specifically, operationally, they thought about it, right? This is what we'd like to have. This is what we need. This is what we're looking for. But then we talk about culturally and financially. Sometimes they haven't really thought that through. And that is actually a very valuable service that we provide, because we help them think through what is it that they want, what is it that they need. So, for example, culturally, if we're talking about a college university, for example, what do they want food service to offer to the students? Do they want it to be, do they want accessibility? In other words, do they want everybody to have food available? Do they want it to be a socializing type of operation where it fosters, let's say, interaction and learning? Or is it just some place to unwind between classes? Those are the type of questions we ask. Financially, do they want to make a profit? Do they want to subsidize it? When we say subsidize, we mean, is the owner willing to pay part of the expenses in order to keep the pricing down for its customers? Those are all the questions that we ask. So based on that, that becomes our framework. And then we do our due diligence after that to determine, okay, based on those 3 criteria, we can start digging a little deeper into what are the concepts that we think would best fit for their needs and their desires. When we talk about concepts, it could be service style, it could be belly up counter, it could be a white table restaurant, it could be a coffee bar, it could be a grab and go, or a combination of those things. And how that would look operationally. What meal periods do they want to offer? Do they want breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Do they want breakfast and lunch only? And then what do those hours of operation look like? Again, culturally, do they want everybody to eat at the same time, or do they want it to be able to be staggered so people can come and go as they like? HR wise, maybe they have employees that only have 30 minutes. Maybe certain ones have 30 minutes and certain ones have an hour or can eat as they wish and when they wish. So it's a lot of due diligence that we ask. And ultimately, the goal is to give them the program that they need, and our designers at Cini-Little the program that they need to start drawing, and ultimately draw something and design something that is going to function and meet their needs culturally, again, financially, and operationally. So we help them as we we help them avoid having a square peg for a round hole.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Oftentimes on the design end, we're brought into projects and they want to skip the programming phase and drop us right into schematic design or even design development. Why is this such a critical misstep for our clients that choose to skip programming?
It's a critical potential misstep because what they could end up with is um, uh, an operation that doesn't fit their needs. So we do wonderful designs at Cini Little, but we could end up designing something that operationally isn't what's best for the owner themselves. So they end up with a failure. Um, so we like to, if they don't want to have programming, we like to recommend that they do, or have some form of a discussion just to make sure that they understand what they want and whatever they're looking for, that we can design something and put something together that fits that both desirable and feasible test.
Great. Thank you, Tim. So, a major focus of your blog is actually space allocation and sizing. Can you walk us through how peak meal demand drives square footage calculations and why designing for true peak of the day or the week rather than rare events is so important?
Right. So when we design and we program for the peak meal of the week, because that's your standard peak. For example, if we're doing a restaurant, their peak is Saturday night, for example. So we design for that. If we're doing a business and industry type thing, and they have now post pandemic where there's more scattered and different differing requirements for people being on site. That, let's say, Wednesday lunch is their busiest, so we design for Wednesday lunch because that's their standard. We need to be able to meet the demand of the peak of the week. We don't do, as we call it, an outlier. For example, an annual all hands event, we don't design for that. Or a restaurant, Easter brunch, Mother's Day brunch, we don't design for that. What we do design is something that helps them meet their peak. So that's part of our background information is we do a lot of questions and to determine what that peak is. For example, how many people are there on any given day of the week, which is different than before the pandemic when we knew how many people were there every day. Now it's different. Um, so if, let's say, we determine it's 1,000 people that are there on Wednesday and that's their peak, 1,000 people, um, we need to know how many people are going to be coming through at the peak hour, how many come through at the peak half hour. If it's an operation that's already in place, we can hopefully get those metrics from their operator, or if they're self-operated, from them. Or if not, then we do even some more digging. So we help determine what we think that peak hour and half hour would be, and then we determine, that is how we determine what the size of the dining room is. And we also net out, for example, people that would be traveling on any given day, or adding in visitors that were there for any given day, or netting out also. Let's say they have a certain amount of catered lunches for that employees go to. We net that out. So we need to know, all right, how many people are going to be coming through that servery at peak lunch, and let's say we determine that's 600. We also ask, what type of seating would you like to have? Because we determine the seating size by square foot per person. Standard cafe, maybe 18 square feet per person. If they want more, um, um, we call it, like if they're in a very tight space, let's say they're in Tokyo or they're in New York City or London, maybe we'd do 16 square feet per seat. If they have a high end restaurant, then it may be 22 to 24 square feet per seat because you have more staff going through the dining room through between the tables. If you have Garrett service, right, for White Cloth or a Michelin star restaurant, then we expand that out. Then we also did that also leads us to sizing the kitchen and the servery. If there is a servery, then we determine based on the type of food that they want and how much they want to have prepared on site in front of the customer. We divide that square footage of the kitchen, some for the servery, some for the kitchen. Um, or if it's a sit down restaurant, we determine how big that restaurant needs to be. In general, for a sit down restaurant, we'll do 18 square feet per seat for the kitchen. We may do as low as 15 square feet if it's a cafe with a mix of a back of house kitchen with a servery. But again, that's all based on the questions that we ask and the determination that we do.
What are some of the most common sizing mistakes you see in both front of house and back of house planning?
The most common is a misallocation of what needs to be uh, the the division between the front of the house and the back of the house, as far as well the division in the back house for server versus kitchen, for example. Um, what we see in sports stadiums, for example, is it's almost all servery, very very little back of house. So we want to make sure that that stays the same. In a stadium, for example, they may have a massive kitchen, but that is usually lots of beer storage and ice and that type of thing, and freezer space for the food that gets delineated amongst all the different um, concepts throughout the stadium. For um, schools, what we'll see is sometimes they don't have enough uh, back of house space for storage, especially let's say K through 12. That you have a lot of cooler spaces needed for all the milks and the juices, and also the frozen foods that come in that they'll make and put in the convection ovens. For business and industry, that they could have a misallocation of space depending on how much they want it done a la minute as far as what is being done for the and for the guests right there as opposed to pre-made all in the kitchen.
And one of the common elements now when we design, for example, workplace or colleges and universities or even retail healthcare is a blurring of the lines between the servery, which is front of house, and the kitchen, which is back of house. And how is that affecting programming?
Where it affects programming is what they understand the critical adjacencies need to be. So, for example, if you have a very busy, large college university servery, it's important that they understand that that servery be designed to maximize the amount of food that can be brought out before the rush. So you don't have to resupply those stations during the peak lunch hour. We also see that, for example, when we do performing arts centers. We're doing a very large one right now where everything has to be loaded up so they can serve 2,500 people in 20 minutes during a intermission. So they have to understand what the back of house kitchen is supposed to do and how that servery is needed to support that peak period.
Okay, great. If you could give one piece of advice to an owner or design team at the start of a project, what would it be about programming?
I would say think through very, very thoroughly what it is that you want your operation to be. and how you want that to function financially. Um, because that, if you can answer those questions and then help and have us help you realize those, then you're much, much more likely to succeed.
This has been such an insightful conversation. Programming isn't just an early task in design, it is the foundation that determines whether the operation can truly perform. Thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise, Tim. And to our listeners, if you found value in this episode, be sure to subscribe and share. We'll continue exploring the principles that drive smart design and strategic food service operations. Until next time, design with clarity and build with purpose. Thank you.